So we're also going to be recording this for anybody that can't be here today. We'll be posting this on our website and also eventually on YouTube. And so just to recap what I just already covered is that we'll be going over introductions by ourselves. We'll be going over a submitted questions section that you guys submitted beforehand. And then as we go through this presentation, if you guys have any questions at all about any of the topics we cover or about anything college application wise or high school wise, please feel free to leave your questions in the chat and we'll do our best to try to answer them to the best of our abilities. As this presentation goes on, we won't be able to answer them till the end of the live Q&A session, but we will try to do our best to provide satisfactory responses, although it will be limited to the amount of time we have. So we'll try not to take too much time in the beforehand stuff. And so with all that said, we will get ready with the presentation. I think, yeah. So Evan, you can take it away.
All right, so we recognize, of course, that there's a pretty wide range of age groups here today, as well as people representing from different schools, different states, potentially even different countries. So welcome everyone again. And I think regardless of your age, regardless of where you come from, college applications can be a very daunting task that sort of looms ahead, right? It's like a big thing on the horizon. You know it's coming, but you're not really sure exactly how it works. And it's understandably kind of confusing until it actually happens. What we're here today to kind of reassure you for is just that college apps really aren't as confusing as you might think or as scary as you might think, especially once you sort of kind of understand all the intricacies of the processes behind them. And so today we'll go through some of those things. Before we started today, like this morning, I was looking for some wisdom. And so I turned to my old friend ChatGPT for a quote about high school. And it said that high school is a canvas and you hold the paintbrush. So make sure it's a masterpiece worth remembering. And I think as freshly graduated seniors, the three of us have a pretty unique vantage point on this idea. Obviously, high school is like a very big part of us, like as a stepping stone to getting into college. College is on your mind for sure. But at the same time, high school is this important chapter of your life. And you, of course, don't want to only focus on the college. You really want to have some memories that you can leave behind and really enjoy the process and enjoy the moment. So obviously, this is like a college admissions panel, but we really do hope that you remember that the college isn't the only thing that you're supposed to be worrying about in high school. And so without further ado, I'll kick it off to Vincent, who will share a little bit of his story.
Yeah, thank you, Evan. So, hi, I'm Vincent Yao, and I'm going to the Wharton School at UPenn. So, a little bit about me. I'll be studying finance/business. Here, my test scores got a 1580 on the SAT, 509 APs, and for the SAT Math 2 subject test, I got an 800 on. For my interests, I'm mainly interested in three different areas, which are business and economics, mathematics, computer science, and data science, and leadership, athletics, and service. So first, I'm going to touch upon business and economics. So I was part of the entrepreneurship team, in which me and my friends developed a robot to kill weeds. I was part of the Young Economics Club, in which I competed in the National Economic Challenge and the National Personal Finance Challenge. This spring, I was a Treasury and FP&A intern at Berwind. I participated in DECA and also in the Leadership in the Business World summer program. And next, for mathematics, computer science, and data science, I was part of the math competition club. I was a researcher at Temple University, and I was part of the math modeling team, in which me and my friends went to New York for a really cool experience. And we basically just modeled this question about e-bikes, and here's a few pictures of us. And I'm also a part of Computer Science Juniors, and where it's just kind of like a community service organization where we just teach middle schoolers computer science. And finally, leadership, athletics, and community service. I'm the captain of two sports teams at Conestoga, the tennis team and the cross-country team. I'm also part of two service organizations, which are Minithon and Key Club. And both these organizations, I just basically help raise money for childhood cancer. And I'm also part of Asian American Culture Club. And a little bit about my college application experience. I applied to 22 schools. 10 of them were EA and 12 of them were RD. And EA stands for early action and RD stands for regular decision. I was accepted into 14 out of these 22 schools. Some of these are on the side here, and I'm committed to UPenn Wharton.
Okay, so hi, I'm Daniel too, as previously mentioned, and I'm going to be attending Princeton University this fall. And so a little bit about me is that my intended major, although I'm not completely decided on it is that I'm planning on majoring in the School of Public and International Affairs at Princeton. And I really enjoy this major because of its interdisciplinary approach, which I think allows me to kind of explore and combine a lot of my interests that I had in high school without fully committing as of yet to one specific field. And so briefly going over my test scores, I had a 1570 SAT, I had fives on 11 APs. And these two tests, the SAT Math 2 and SAT Biology, you guys probably don't recognize because they got rid of them briefly after I took them, but I got perfect scores on those. And then so my interest in high school could be generally divided into the realms of leadership and service, biology and healthcare, and law and public policy. And so for leadership and service, I would say one of the most impactful parts of my high school experience was a student council for me, which I was involved in all 4 years. So I really loved student council. I eventually was elected as student body president my senior year. And so I really enjoyed this platform where I could really embrace that opportunity to serve and have an opportunity where I could kind of give back to the school community in the best way and however much I could. And so I really enjoyed having that as a leadership and service experience. Alongside that, I was also served on the school board as a student representative. So I was able to kind of be a voice for the student body in our community. And alongside that, I was Flight Club president, which is a community service club at my school, as well as Mini-thon planning committee head, which Vincent briefly touched on, which raises money for pediatric cancer. And so moving on to my other interests in biology and healthcare, I would say the most impactful experience I had with this was participating in the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Sciences, which was hosted at Carnegie Mellon. Essentially, it's a 5-week full scholarship program where you go to really just conduct research for 5 weeks and you take advanced courses in subjects like organic chemistry, discrete mathematics, computer science, and cancer cell and stem cell biology. And so it was a really unique experience. I had a lot of fun and it really helped me to cultivate my love for the sciences. And at the same time, I was president of a few clubs at my school, biology club and public health club. And I was also a marketing head for the Young Scientist Journal. So that was a organization out of school that I participated in, and as well as I was also a Annenberg High School Science Symposium head. And so moving on to my next interest of law and public policy, I participated in mock trial. There's a picture on the right of me and my team at the Chester County District Court. And so I was able to participate in that. I really loved exploring my interest in this area. And I also participated in the Greater Good Initiative, which was a youth-led policy think tank. And so we collaborated with legislators in trying to write policies that really addressed solutions that affected the youth in modern day issues. And it was a really interesting experience for me. I also participated in DECA, which was kind of related to public policy and law, which I was an international finalist of. And so my college application experience is a little bit unique in that I only applied to 3 schools. I got accepted to all 3. And that's because I applied to Princeton REA. And when I got in, there was no other school that I wanted to go through over Princeton. It was my number 1. And so I decided not to apply to any other schools because I didn't want to take away from anybody else that was in the application pool. And also I really just had my fit in Princeton. And so the reason why I chose Princeton was because I really liked its emphasis on academics and its strong focus on the undergraduate curriculum. A lot of other universities, they have all these graduate schools where they're all focused on their PhD candidates and all of their grad school candidates, but Princeton really boils down its focus to its undergrad and providing a really rich education. And so that's why it was my number 1. And so I'll pass it on to Evan, who will go over his little high school journey.
All right, thank you for that transition, Daniel. Again, I'm Evan. I'm going to Yale in the fall. A little bit about me. I'm actually somewhat undecided for my major right now. And I'm partially split between biology, in which case I think I would go pre-med and then I'd be interested in going for like an MD, PhD in the future. Or there's also this cool major at Yale called ethics, politics, and economics. 4 words, but it's technically 1 major. And in that case, I think I would go to law school and pursue something in that realm. And you can sort of see how that aligns with my interests below, because there's a part of me that's very humanistic with like journalism and writing. There's a part interested in science through bio and healthcare like Daniel. And then I've sort of separated squash into its own category right below. So I'll dive a little bit more into each of those now. Starting off with journalism writing, the primary activity that I did here was the Spoke newspaper, which is Conestoga High School's student-run newspaper. I remember being in 8th grade when I think my English teacher or someone told me to apply. And I was like, okay, sure, why not? Just because I really enjoyed listening to the news every day in the morning, like on the car radio. And I figured, okay, might as well take a try. And what I found when I got there, like freshman year, into that classroom was just like, it was just such a community of people. I'm all eager to learn about journalism, all eager to report on news. And I learned like a lot of very important skills through that newspaper. But in addition to the Spoke, I was a Penn Center for Digital Writing Research Fellow last summer, where I was working with the center and analyzing digital discourse in youth and teachers. I helped a little bit with the New Voices campaign in Pennsylvania, which is a grassroots student journalist-led campaign to protect student press freedom rights within state legislatures. So it's not only in Pennsylvania, it's in a lot of different states, but I helped a little bit with the Pennsylvania team. And in my free time, I try to do some Wikipedia editing. And so I help maintain some of the squash related pages and just update them after tournaments, which is pretty cool. As for the awards, notably, technically this was after college applications were done, but I was, I think, most proud of this one, the PA Student Journalist of the Year for 2023. Okay, switching over to bio and healthcare. I would kind of break these activities down into the ones I did in school and the ones I did out of school. And so the first three there, Public Health Club, Bio Club, and Annenberg Symposium, are all sort of in school, either clubs or groups, whatever you want to call it. And so you work on those with your peers. So for example, Daniel and I did Public Health Club, Bio Club, and Annenberg together. And for the other ones were sort of independent things that I tackled outside of school. So like for the US China Health Summit, I was an intern there during the COVID summer, so 2019, 2020. I was also research assistant at San Diego State during COVID, where I was doing biostat stuff. And then more recently, for the past 2 years, I've been a lobbyist with Partners in Health, which is like this nonprofit based out of Massachusetts, but we do a lot of work meeting with local legislators. The most recent one, I think, is we met with an aide for Senator John Fetterman a few months ago in person. You can see that photo in the bottom right. And we were talking about some important healthcare bills. And finally, I was a researcher in the BU RISE summer program. This was last summer, and I was doing research in a vitamin D lab up in Boston. And last but not least, of course, is squash. I started playing squash probably 5th or 6th grade. So not necessarily early, but not necessarily too late. I considered like the competitive college recruiting route for a while, actually, up through about junior year, at which point I figured, okay, this is probably not the route for me. I could probably achieve like the goals that I'm aiming for more easily, actually, without going through the college recruiting pathway. And so at that point, I figured, okay, I'm not going to go for the recruitment. But I did continue playing squash, of course, and so it was just something I really enjoyed. And I ended up being one of the captains on the boys varsity squash team this year. I was a top 40 nationally ranked player in the U15 division. And I played number 2 for Conestoga High School this year. As for my college application experience, I didn't apply to only 3 schools like Daniel, but not nearly as many as Vincent. So I'm right in between at 10. Most of those were early application schools. So like EA, or some of them were like scholarship priority deadlines. I think there were only 2 schools that I applied to regular decision. And I remember visiting a lot of these schools all throughout high school. Whenever like my family was traveling, we would stop by like a campus. It was nearby on the way. And I would just sort of check it out and record, oh, what did I think was cool about this one or not. And by the time I actually was beginning to write essays and putting together my college list this summer after junior year, I had sort of an idea of like where I wanted to go. One warning that I would give is that I did procrastinate to some extent throughout the whole college application essay writing process in particular. I think a lot of people struggle with this, just the time management aspect, because it's very tough having like, you can sort of see college applications as this long-term project because you have write so many essays in let's say 5 or 6 months, right? And so if you don't have a very strict timeline for yourself, it can be tough to stay on track. And I found myself struggling a little bit at some point in there. But luckily, in the end, I was accepted into Yale under the restrictive early action round. And so there's a little happy ending. But we did want to share some major takeaways with you guys. And these are sort of general things that we all three of us shared in our college in our high school experiences. The first of which is that you should always look to be open to new opportunities. One thing that I like to say is just say yes. It's pretty simple, but like as a freshman, I was joining pretty much any club I could, really dipping my fingers in like every pool. And saying yes, I think allows you to be like exposing yourself to new things that you may not like, but like you may discover like a really cool passion that you may not have expected. So for example, like I don't think I've ever seen myself being like a journalist and like taking photos. But here I am. Secondly, there's no correct way to approach high school, and at some point you do have to pave your own road. So obviously, like we're sitting here today telling you our stories and giving whatever advice that we can give. But if you just tried like completely copy us, like do every activity that we do every award, it's really not a feasible way to approach your own high school experience, just because no two people are the same. You really just can't just straight up copy anyone. Because everyone has unique interests, everyone has unique strengths, and at some point there's a luck factor, right? So there's things outside of your control, and at some point you do have to like decide, okay, I'm going to take some inspiration from those who have come before me, but I'm also going to sort of decide what I want to do for myself here. And the last thing is a saying that I like, and it's find the things that you love, and you'll love the things you find. So the whole idea behind this is, okay, if you pursue the things that you're really passionate about, if you find the things that you love to do, that you're willing to stay up all night grinding for, like applications, like, okay, maybe you're pulling an all-nighter, but like this is what you really love doing, then you'll really love the things that you discover about your own character, about your personality, about the limits of your own patience. There's a lot of things that this could be applicable in, but for sure, the message here is, okay, if you really do what you love, you will come to discover a lot of cool things about yourself.
All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the services we offer. And we're going to go to our website here. And first, on our home screen, if you scroll all the way down, we do have, Evan, would you, if you scroll all the way down, we do have a, you can explore about us and also our services up above using those two links, but also down here, we have our 15-minute consultation, which basically you meet with one of us or all three of us one-on-one, and we just give you some opinion about how we can help you and how we can help you reach your college application goals. And next we have our workshops. We currently offer 2 of them. So the first one is maximizing your high school potential. Now this one is targeted towards students in like grades 7 to 11. And we mainly want to help you create the best version of yourself in high school. So we'll help you gain opportunities to get into clubs, to get access to competitions, and basically just help you create the best portfolio and help you maximize your chances to get into one of these top schools. And Evan, if you scroll just a little bit down, you'll see we have a few of these. We have many of these services that we offer, such as like taking advantage of your summers and even some scholarship and award applications. And for our second workshop is mainly for students who are applying to college next year. It's called Conquering the Common App and Your Essays. And here we'll be mainly focusing on just structuring the Common App. So how do you write your activities? How do you write your extracurriculars? And also, how do you write your essays, right? So we know there's a lot of essays, like the personal statement, the supplemental essays, and even within the supplemental essays, there's like a bunch of different essays, right? There's the Why Us essays, the community essays, as well as many other essays. And we just go into detail in every single one of these and help you break them down and write the best essays possible.
And so in addition to our workshop sessions, we also offer private one-on-one consulting, or like maybe all three of us could be like 3-on-1. And so we offer these services to for pretty much anything that you want. If you have any like uncertainty or kind of stress about this whole process, we can come in and you can tell us what you're worried about, and we'll do our best to kind of meet your issue, address your issues, and strategize with you with how to best proceed. And so this is something we offer for any stage of the college application process, whether that's fine-tuning your last few like words on your essays, on your personal statement in like December of your senior year, or even in like junior year, if you're trying to study for the SAT, you don't you're having a little trouble with figuring out how these strategies work and seeing the trends. We offer all the services in one-on-one sessions, and you can see packages more if you check out our website at pioneerprep.net. You can see more about the specific services, but in terms of our private sessions, this is really dedicated towards like creating a tailored approach for each one of you, because college applications, at the end of the day, it's about the individual. It's not about becoming some kind of template and becoming some kind of ultimate prototype for a college applicant. Although some people might laud that as their strategy, at the end of the day, colleges are not looking for templates. They're not looking for robots. They're looking for people and individuals. And so we're here to really help you meet that individualized experience if that's something you guys are interested in. And so the reason why we dove into our services in the first place was because we understand that this is a very stressful time for a lot of people, and it almost seems like it's foreign to a lot of people too. And so we kind of just wanted to like kind of we want to humanize the process and de-stress for some people, and help people like really feel at ease, because we want people to know, help people know that they're putting their best foot forward, right? Like we want people to be at ease knowing that they checked all their boxes, they dotted all their I's, and they crossed all their T's, and that they're able to really demonstrate to colleges really their strongest potential. And we know that's a worry that a lot of students have, especially us. We struggled with that this past fall, and so we really were able to grow in that area, and now we know a lot of strategies, and we really think that we could help people. And so please feel free to sign up for a free 15-minute consultation. We'll video chat with you, and we'll see where we can get started in terms of what we offer. But that's enough about our services. Without further ado, we'll get into the Q&A session of the webinar, which will be first starting with submitted questions that you guys did through the registration form, through the Google form. So the first question, I'll pass this off to Evan, is how do you manage your time during high school?
That's a good question for sure. And I think a lot of people, once they enter high school, are like, oh, wow, there's so many things I have to do, like all these AP classes I have to take, et cetera, et cetera. How do I possibly survive? I hear all these horror stories of people pulling all-nighters. I'm going to die. But probably not is the answer to that. The thing here, I think, that you always have to remember is that you do have 24 hours in the day, but if you use those 24 hours wisely, you can accomplish a lot more than you think. And so one strategy that I tried to do throughout high school is to do all my homework, so-called homework in quotes, because I sort of tried avoiding to do all my homework at home, and rather I would do it in my free periods at school, in study halls, sometimes during lunch if I really had to, or this is probably not the wisest strategy, but occasionally during other classes. So I'd do like Spanish work in chemistry or whatever, but stuff like that. And I think as long as you really make the most of the time that you have, and then you also are responsible if you feel overwhelmed, there's no shame in cutting back the activities that you do, but it's a lot of just being responsible to yourself, and being accountable. And I think you'll probably be fine once you get into the flow. So the next question that we had was, someone was asking about how does our district, TESD in Conestoga, compare to other schools around us? And so Daniel, do you have a perspective on this one?
Yeah, I can touch on that. So I think this might be like a little less applicable for those that aren't from our district. But so in terms of people that are in a district, TSD, I would say, is a lot more, I would say we're very lucky, first of all, to be in the Tredyffrin Nissan School District. I think it's an amazing district to be in. If you're in a public school, this is the public school you want to be in. But it's important to recognize that different schools have different opportunities. And I think I was very exposed to this when I went to the program I went to over the summer, where I was interacting with students from other schools in Pennsylvania. And even just within Pennsylvania, there's a lot of differences between the schools, because you have different teachers and you have different opportunities available. And so I would say that at Conestoga, the high school at TSD, there's a lot of opportunities for self-growth. And for those that are willing to take up the challenge, you can really achieve a lot. But at the same time, there is a great demographic of high achievers. And so it does take a lot to stand out from amongst other high achievers. And you don't necessarily have to stand out. You just have to make sure that you are, if you want to be competitive college admissions, that you are competing. You're not, it's not that it's a competition, but that you are making sure you're doing the best you can in all those areas and that you're not slacking off, because it is a pretty strong district in terms of academics. And so our next question is, how do you build your college list? And I think Vincent will help us answer that.
Yeah, so as you guys know, I applied at 22 colleges, so quite a lot. I'll just talk about how I built my college list. So when you're looking into colleges, there's a lot of components you want to look at. So I know a lot of people will focus directly on the academic reputation, right? So they go to US News and type up, the top like 10, 20 schools in the United States and like apply to like a bunch of them. And while, that does hold merit sometimes, I think it really does come down to fit, like what Dan was talking about with him in Princeton. There's a lot more to it than just academic reputation. There's also academic reputation by major. There's where exactly that school is. So I know that some schools are party schools and some schools are smaller schools and maybe more focused on the academic side. So you really have to find that good fit where you'll be having fun as well as learning a lot and and managing your time well and taking advantage of all the opportunities in college. So there's not really one way you can answer that question. But you do want to have like safeties, targets, and reaches. And we all know reaches are those, the Ivies, the top 20 schools, they're mostly all reaches. And you have your targets and your safeties might be your state school. So make sure you have a good mix of all three of them. So you actually go to college and you don't get rejected by all of them. And also, so you can get into a school that you like and you'll really enjoy next year and have the best time at.
Yeah, so really quick, I just want to backpack off what Vincent just said. Really emphasizing the last point you touched on is that you don't just want to like full send yourself at the top 20 schools and then not have any targets or safeties that you really like, because I've heard horror stories of people that they're like, all right, I'll make at least one of these 8 Ivies, I'll apply to all the Ivies, and then I'll apply to some random school like University of like Rochester or something. It's not random, but like that's just the first thing that came to my head anyway. And then so they do this and then they get into University of Rochester, but they don't get into any of the 8 schools that they applied to, and then they're only stuck with that option. And so I've heard about a lot of these cases, and so that's why it's important to build a well-rounded list of colleges you want to apply to. Make sure you really study your targets and your safeties, that you really be confident that if you go there, you'll be satisfied with going there. And so for me, that was like Pitt and Penn State. Pitt specifically was my number one safety. And so I think that's a really important part of building the college list process. And then so our next question is, what did you do over the summers? And I can touch on that. And so for the summers in high school, there's a lot of different routes you could take. One thing that's very common is that high school students will, if you're old enough, they'll go try to get a job. And I think that's a very smart thing, especially for your freshman and sophomore summers. So the summers after your freshman year and summers after your sophomore year, that is a very wise decision, especially since there's not that many summer programs available at that time. They're usually more directed towards juniors and seniors. And so applying those jobs, making sure you're doing something over the summer instead of just sitting at home playing video games is pretty important, I would say, because there's a lot of there used to be a lot of college questions that would straight up ask you, college application questions that be like, what'd you do over the summers? What'd you do last summer? But nowadays they kind of phrase them in a way that's more obscure, in the sense that they're really asking like, what are some interests you pursued in the past 4 years? And really, summers are a very long time that we have a lot of free time, and that's where you'll be able to really build up the experiences that you can talk about in your essays, where you pursued your passions. For me, a big passion of mine was science, and so I talked a lot about the program I did. For other people, it might be like maybe they're working on like their own invention, maybe they're trying to build like a US patent or something, and they're trying to get something. Or they're trying to start their own business, and they can really like the summers are important because you have to make sure you're working in things that you can talk about and ways to demonstrate that you really have a passion in some area. And so I think that's a big part of making sure that you have a good college application profile. But really the important part isn't that you have to do something super special, like go apply to all the top programs, but you just have to be doing something that you're passionate about, or something that shows that you have you're maintaining a drive for the summer and that you didn't just slack off. And so our next question is, when do I start preparing?
I can take this next question. So, it really is an accumulation of all of high school, right? So in ninth grade, you might be joining your clubs, might be joining your first few clubs, right? And you're getting used to the flow of high school, the flow of academics and everything. And then you hit sophomore year and you're starting to realize what you have passion in. So let's just say it's computer science, for example. And then you enjoy computer science, so you start taking AP computer science courses. And then junior year, you're looking into leadership and you're applying to a few summer programs, right? So PGSS is a very popular one in our school. So let's say you apply to that program, you get in, you work over the summer, you get in that program, and you're still, doing well academically in clubs. You're starting to get leadership positions. You got elected president of the computer science club, and then senior year rolls around, and at that point, you're really kind of finished creating your portfolio. So all your extracurriculars, all your awards, all your grades are basically already finished, and that's a time where you really have to start writing your essay. So I know a lot of rising seniors have probably already started brainstorming essay ideas, maybe even start talking to their parents about, hey, what colleges am I going to apply to? And I think that's really good time to start. So end of junior year, going into senior year that summer, you should really start planning your essays, start thinking about what you're going to write, and one good recommendation that I hear from a lot of people, including my own high school counselor, was to finish a personal statement before school year starts. And I think that's a really good place to start. So the personal statement is sent to every single school. It's one of probably your biggest essay, and you really spend the most time on that. So if you can get that out of the way before the school year starts and before you're boggled down by a bunch of academic work, I think that's a great thing to do. And then throughout the rest of senior year, all the way until January, you'll be applying to colleges. If you get in the early round, congratulations, you're finished. But if you do not, you will have to work until the first week of January. And then after that, you're pretty much basically finished. You might have some interviews left to prepare for, maybe some application updates, but basically after the first week of January, you have finished your whole college application journey. Daniel,
Okay, and this last question here, someone was asking, how do I find the right college fit for me? So Daniel was talking a lot about college fit earlier. Do you have anything to elaborate on there?
Yeah. So just to add on that, I think a lot of people think like, I mentioned this earlier. A lot of people say like, oh, I'll launch all my applications at all the top 20 schools, and then I'll eventually get into one of them. But I think that something that some people don't like acknowledge and take the time to do is that each college has its own individual college profile, right? And so I'll take an example as Princeton. Its motto is in the service of the nation and in the nation's service and the service of humanity. And so there's this really strong focus on service. And then also if you talk to students at the Princeton community, they'll mention that they'll mention how there's really also strong academic, like peer, like study focus, academic focus within that community. And so each college has its own little profile that has its own unique traits. And so it's important that when you're building your applications, that you're making sure that you find one that really fits with you. So for me, I'm a very academic person. I really like I like learning, and I also really like service was a big part of my high school experience. And so I felt like Princeton was just like a straight on fit for me. And so for other people, like for example, Vincent was very into business, and Penn has a great business program at Warren. And it's also very close. That was a very strong point in also the selection of UPenn as Vincent's #1 school. And so there's a lot of different areas that you can look at, but it's really all about like researching the colleges, because as you research, you'll find that it's not just like these colleges aren't just names, they're all their individual little communities. And at the end of the day, colleges are looking to see whether you fit within their community. So I think that that's the important part of finding the right college fit for you is finding out what kind of people go to those colleges and what their emphases are and what their values are, because these colleges all have different mottos. And the final question for submitted questions is, why do you think you got in? And by the way, we understand we're going a little bit late right now, so we're going to stay past 8 p.m. We'll answer questions for a while past 8 p.m. So if you guys are still free to stay, like please feel free to continue to ask questions. We understand the introduction part ran a little long, and so we're completely happy to stay and help answer questions. We have a Zoom premium account, so we don't have to worry about exiting Zoom. So please feel free to continue asking questions. And so our last question for submitted questions is, why do you think you got in? maybe Evan, you can talk about that.
Sure. So I think one thing that the three of us shared was showing like demonstrated interest in some field, or it like not necessarily one thing, but multiple things. I think each of us touched on at least like 3 areas, right? That our interests were like uh, separated into. And like one thing that colleges really like to see is people with some specific interests. Doesn't have to be like you really good at one thing. But it just has to be like, okay, you're showing this prolonged dedication within one area, and they can kind of see you fitting within their class. So like one thing that college counselors like to say is that colleges are admitting people to form like a well-rounded class, and they don't want like necessarily well-rounded people. And so to some extent that's true in the idea that like when the college is evaluating you, they're looking at how you would fit within the context of the rest of their students. And so I think the probably the most important part, it's not what activity you do or exactly like what awards you win, what your SAT score is. But at the end of the day, it's really about, okay, what things did you show genuine interest in, and then did you pursue those to the best of your ability? And if you did, I think it's much less important of what that specific area is. And the real important thing here is just that the fact that you really dedicate yourself to them. So we'll move on to some of the audience questions now. If you have, okay, I see a lot of questions in the chat, so maybe we should run through that first, guys. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so someone asked, I'll start from the top. Someone asked, someone asked about USACO Silver, and is it difficult to get into? So Vincent, you're the resident coding
All right.
coding expert, so why don't you dive into that one?
All right, thank you, Evan. All right, so USACO Silver. So if you guys don't know what that is, it's stands for the United States Computing Olympiad. And there's many divisions of this. So it starts at bronze, silver, gold, and it goes to platinum. So silver is really the second level that there is. And to be honest, no, it's not too difficult. But you do have to study for it. It's not like something that you can just do like without any studying. So I know that there's a lot of computer science courses, and usually if you can do well in both the computer science courses and you spend maybe a month outside of school studying for it, you should be completely fine. So short answer, no, not too much, not too hard, but it is definitely a challenge. Again, and then I guess we can move on to the next question. The next question I see is, hi Daniel. It's from Jeff, by the way. Hi Daniel, I'm very interested in joining student council. Considering I'm not well known in my school, do you have any tips and tricks for how I can join?
Yeah, so hi Jeff. I know that you're already the sophomore class president of our school, but for those people that are not Jeff Wang and that actually are asking this question for real, some basic tips I would think I would do is really student council, the one of the less, I guess, less like what's the word, universal things about student council, as in the sense that it's like not this accessible to everyone, in that you kind of have to be a little bit extroverted. You have to put yourself out there in order to kind of run for those positions. Oftentimes almost 90%, I would say like 99% of the time, student government is determined by a student body vote and not by like teachers and stuff like that. And so you really have to go out there and really just interact with your peers and try to make them see why you'd be a good fit and why you'd be a good leader. So that starts, whether that starts in the classroom of being a good example and helping out, of listening in class, being active in class, being present in class, and also a presence in the class in the sense that like you're constantly asking questions, but not too many questions. But you just have to, and you're helping out your classmates in class that don't understand stuff. If people see you as a candidate for a leader, they'll vote for you. And so at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to, is if you're able to give that impression to other people, then that will far better your chances for being on student council. I see a question from use iPhone. Has any of you used external college admissions advisor? Thanks. And so real quick for me, I did not use any external college admissions advisor at all. But I believe that Vincent and Evan did. So they can briefly touch on that if they want to.
Yeah, so I could just go quickly about mine, and then Evan could talk about his. So for me, I actually had two. I was trying to see which one. I was experimenting with both of them. I think that they're very expensive. However, there are benefits to them. I think that essay writing is one of the most difficult portions about college admissions. So like many of those questions, they seem very straightforward, but you cannot answer them straightforward because everyone answers them very straightforward. So you have to be smart about how you answer them. And that really boils down to learning from other people. I know that was one of my biggest mistakes, was that those like questions that like they ask you about, talk about something very talk about something you like doing. And I'll just say like, I like running or like cross country or I like tennis, right? You can't really say those things because like it's very common, and you really have to get help from other people and external sources, and they'll help you a lot. So I did, and I guess Evan, if you want to touch upon what how you were helped by your advisor.
Sure, I think that's pretty comprehensive. But for me, it was pretty similar to Vincent. Just like I feel like I was actually a decently strong writer entering the college essay writing process. Just because I had like a good amount of writing experience from newspaper and from other things. And so for me, like having that person there, it just helped with like generating ideas and taking things from like a new vantage point, and also just kind of keeping me accountable. If I was like having a busy week or something like that, just kind of reminding me that I had stuff to do. But yeah, I think the rest of my experience was pretty similar with Vincent. But in the interest of time, I think someone DM'd me a question about what is the Annenberg Symposium team? And so both Daniel and I were part of that. Dan, would you like to talk about
Yeah,
that
so
briefly?
that's actually something that's only in the TSD. Oh, so it's in Pennsylvania in general. There's different Annenberg. It's like a chapter organization. So schools can take up the Annenberg Symposium as a part of like as an organization. And they can have like a little club there, or like depends on how the school handles it. But it's really in the greater Philadelphia area. And so you can check to see if your school has a program. But basically it's like you do like a year-long research project on some medical field topic of your choice. And then at the end of the year, you present in front of a board of medical professionals with other schools, and they kind of judge you based on your presentation. And it was a really fun experience. I learned a lot, and I met a lot of cool people doing it. And so that's what that is. I also see another question. I got a direct message from somebody. What are some tips for interviews as a part of the college applications process? And I think that's probably a pretty big kind of point of confusion or point of people really want to know about that. So we can touch on that. I can go briefly on based on my like experiences. For interviews, what I really did was first of all, I went into it with the mindset of like being myself, right? You don't want to put on some kind of facade or some kind of fake character that will end up kind of backfiring, because when it boils down to it, that's not who we really are. But in terms of preparing for the interviews, I think really before going into it, you should really just plan out some topics you want to touch on, some of the things you've done that for example, like I thought about some ways that I could incorporate talking about my experiences in student council, like if I could transition from talking about one thing to the other thing. Really at the end of the day, college interviews are actually just conversations. And if you really can see it in that perspective, then it's really the best way possible, because they're really seeing how you would fit into the community, right? Like if you're what they're testing is if you're sitting down at lunch with some person from the school, are you able to have a conversation with them in a way that's intellectually stimulating, in a way that fits into like the college community, and in a way that like demonstrates who you are as a person. And so they're really trying to see your humanity through those college interviews. And so interviews are pretty important, although you can see how much they're valued based on per college. You can look that up, and we can cover that some other time, but you can look up common data sets and you can see all that. But we can move on to the next question. Somebody asked, it sounds like y'all are pretty multidisciplinary in your interests. How'd you highlight that and make use of that in your applications? Does anybody want to cover that? I think Evan, you were pretty multidisciplinary.
I'll take that. I really like that question actually, because again, like I mentioned earlier, like some people say you have to just be really good at one thing. Like you just got to be the #1 piccolo player in your grade in the country, or else you're not going to get into Harvard, right? Like that's sort of the mentality that some people have these days. And it's sort of a misnomer in that, like obviously yes, like a lot of these top colleges do like having people who are very good at one thing. An example that came up recently was like Nathan Chen, who's a figure skater at Yale, and won like an Olympic gold medal, is obviously very good at figure skating, and that's probably like a very big plus for him in getting in. But like you got to think about all the other 2,000 kids in his class, most of which, and at least the kids who I've talked to, are not like some sort of world-class athlete or musician who's winning Olympic gold medals. I mean, rather, again, they're just like essentially normal people who are very passionate about some very specific things, and they're very driven to. A lot of them want to see some real change happen in this world, and so they're sort of these pioneers who are catalyzing sort of change inside their own communities and having like as big of an impact as they can in their chosen passion field, right? So again, that's the biggest thing, deciding on what you really enjoy and then pursuing that. I think second part of that question was like, how do you highlight that? I think just in the essays, just like touching on as many activities as you can. And then obviously when you're listing out your like activities and awards, you want to showcase like your full personality. That's sort of how it goes. I see a question in there that says, what AP courses would you recommend for freshman year and throughout high school for a better GPA? And what clubs would you suggest for high school? Obviously, this might be a little bit tailored to Conestoga, but Vincent, do you have any ideas on that one?
Yeah, of course. So AP courses are for okay, so for I'm just gonna talk about in Conestoga because that's where I went to high school. But in Conestoga, there are a few AP courses that you can take. So that's AP Bio, AP World History, AP Computer Science, and maybe AP Calc. But if you're talking purely about GPA, so there's weighted GPA and there's unweighted GPA. Unweighted GPA does not take into account the courses that you take and their difficulty, while weighted GPA takes that into an account. So for example, if you take an AP course, your weighted GPA will be a lot higher, but it will not really affect your unweighted GPA. So yeah, for AP courses, a lot of people take AP Bio and AP World History. AP Computer Science, I took it. However, I know a lot of people do not take it, and that's not really like, you can always take that another year. However, if you want to have a rigorous course schedule, I will recommend taking more AP courses. However, not everyone can handle, 2, 3, 4 AP courses. So it's best to know your limits and challenge yourself. However, don't go overboard and, put yourself and give yourself like 4 AP courses to take. It's really not worth all that stress and all that time. And, it's just not worth it. As for the clubs, also if you go to a different high school as well, you probably know what courses you can take, and it kind of goes the same for you. So just take how many AP courses that you think you can handle. I say, if you're a pretty good student, I think 2 to 3 is a pretty good guideline. And I know a lot of people who take 1, and I think that's pretty challenging as well. So just know your limits. What clubs would you suggest for high school? There's a lot of clubs in high school. In Conestoga, I think we have over 200 clubs, and you can really join any of them, right? Like all these clubs are amazing. There are bigger clubs. Like Key Club is a pretty big service club, so that's one club you can consider joining. There's student council, there's bio club, chem club, there's all these like academic clubs as well. So just go through your school's club list or attend a club fair and just register for a bunch of clubs and see if you enjoy them. If you do, stick with them. If you don't, so you can also drop them. It doesn't really matter. And yeah.
Real quick, just to backpack off of that is that if you're really concerned about GPA, I would say that take all the APs that you can. And it wasn't like that I did that purposely, but that's what I ended up doing. Because for me, it was more of like I liked being challenged in my classes and I liked rising up to the occasion. But I would say that like if you have the opportunity to take APs, do it, because I think it'll be a lot more rewarding by the end of the year. You'll realize how much you've learned. And AP classes at the end of the day, like they provide you with more like tangible information that you can apply to real world situations. Like I came out of AP Bio a lot more informed about how things worked in our world. And I think that if you're able to take AP courses, if you're able to handle that course load, I think that a lot of people that think they're not able to are actually able to. They just maybe they don't have the practice of like maybe studying or working in class well, or listening in class, or the discipline of staying focused. But I think that if you really try, I think you'll find that you'll do a lot better than you can. In terms of clubs, I would really not try to join clubs that you see other people like necessarily like, oh, I want to copy that person, so I'll join that club. Like the important part of anything is do what you're interested in, and not just because you think that that's what you have to do to get into college, because the colleges can see right through that. And at the end of the day, what they want to see is is passion and interest, a genuine interest in something. So although you can join like clubs that are really good for in general for like developing like your skills, like Speech and Debate is a really great club, Deco is a great club, all those things that have developed certain skills, you should join ones that you find genuine interest in. I saw this really good question. I'm kind of skipping through some people, but we'll go back. I think I want to touch on, are there any pitfalls to avoid in the personal statement essay? Are there specific things to say or not say? Of course, like we cannot go all the way in depth. Like that would take probably like a while to actually cover like the entire personal statement. And that's why we offer those workshop sessions and personal consulting sessions. But I really briefly, I think that's something that a lot of people think that you're supposed to do for Common App essays is to like tell a story about like how you like overcame like some like really fun, like some, it's almost like robotic in the sense that it's like you had adversity and then you overcame it. Well, that is a great story to tell. Every single person's going to be telling that story. So I think a big pitfall to avoid in the personal statement / essay in general is that you don't want to do things that everybody is going to do, because you really want to find a way to stand out. And that's what I think we are all able to do with our essays. And so I think like one common pitfall is like don't write an essay about like the time you broke your bone and you had to come back for it in order to play lacrosse or something like that. Like don't write a sports injury essay. Don't write an essay about how you had $20 and you gave it to a homeless person and that shows how good you are because you help out homeless people. Like although that's great and that I'm very happy that you do that if that's the case. That's not necessarily what college is looking for in the sense of a personal statement, because what the personal statement essentially is, what it boils down to is 650 words for the college to know about you. Like that's all they see is that piece of paper in front of them, and they can't see you in person. Like your college, you'll never meet your actual college admissions officer. You might go to an interview, but that's not going to be your college admissions officer. And so that's all they have is these words on a paper, and you have to do your best to show them who you are through those words and show them your values and show them your strengths. And that's at the end of the day what the personal statement is all about. So the specific things to say or not say, I covered kind of like the topics, but I guess like don't be weird. Like don't say like haha. Like don't type out HAHA in your essay if you're saying a joke, or like LOL. Don't write sentences that are like 50 words long and take up an entire paragraph, and then they can't read them because it's so long, and they get bored halfway through. Don't have a bad intro, because if they have a bad intro, they'll throw your essay to the bottom of the list, and then they won't read the rest of it. And other than that, I think like we could go on for like hours about personal statement, but that's like a kind of general like tips and tricks and overview of like what the personal statement essentially is. Hope that helped. We can go back to the top. So a general question is like, how do I find opportunities for growth over the summer? I guess I see other things about the summer. Like we can kind of touch about like, when did we start looking for these programs, or like how do we apply them? Evan, I think you had a lot of experience doing that, especially. Do you want to kind of like briefly touch on like, yeah, it's just like a general kind of overview of it. We don't have to go too into specifics.
Sure. Yeah. So the opportunities. Okay. So summer programs are obviously one thing that we touched on. But as someone said earlier, like you can get a job, you can do research, you can do any number of things over the summer, right? Number one is just figuring out like what subject area are you interested in, like what might you want to do, and then number two is just doing some research into like what are some of the options available within that subject area. So a common way to do it is just like you just go on Google and you look at what other people have done. Older kids, I mean, people on YouTube honestly have some good recommendations sometimes, and I think online these days you find like a lot of pretty good resources that'll direct you to whatever programs are like typically recommended, whatever research internships are open. One strategy that's actually worked out pretty well is, I think, like the power of the cold email is really understated sometimes, and sometimes all it takes is, okay, I'm interested in physics and I want to do some physics research. I'm just going to reach out to a local physics professor at a local university near me, and a lot of the times if you express some like genuine interest in like this professor's work, and you show like some way you like might be able to contribute to their research project, they'd be happy to take you on over the summer as like some sort of assistant. So again, a lot of it is just keeping your eyes open, going on Google, like finding stuff, keeping your eyes open within your connections, like your network, seeing if your parents know anyone who has some ideas. And then, yeah, just again, if you find any opportunity that maybe you're not so sure, there's no harm in trying it out. So remember to say yes. That's sort of the last thing. But I see another question right after that. Okay, Bruce asked, what are the AP recommendations for junior year? This is kind of tied to the earlier AP question. So Vincent, do you want to just really quickly go over junior year APs, maybe?
Yeah, so junior year, you're probably your like your hardest course rigor and biggest course load that you will have during high school. So I personally took 6 APs. I think Evan also took 6, I think 5 or 6, and then Daniel took I think around 6 or 7. So we all took a large amount of APs junior year. But yeah, I mean, like in our school, there's only a certain amount of APs that you can take. So take APs that you have passion towards. So I know that like we were all pretty like, geared towards STEM. So we all took 2 science APs. But yeah, I mean, this in our school, there's a good amount of APs, but just continue like learning. We all love learning, and just take the APs that are offered in your school and as many as you can. Moving on to the next question. I see, trying to find where we were. Did you guys?
So the next question I just answered
Extreme
in-
stress.
Oh wait, oh I didn't see that. Extreme stress. I can talk about that briefly. I think that's a very general question, and I think that's a general question for a reason, because I think a lot of people do deal with that in high school. I think that the most important thing is to make sure you put your health first. Like your brain is extension of your part of your body, right? And so if you're not sleeping well enough, you're not going to be doing as well in the tests. You're not be as efficient on your homeworks and stuff. And so it's important to prioritize sleep. And although high school students are pretty bad at that, admittedly, dealing with extreme stress is at the end of the day, I think it's if you're too stressed out, you have to evaluate yourself and you have to see like, am I involved in too many things? Am I too committed? And if you are, I think it's wise to cut down, because your health is not worth an extra activity on your Common App list. And so at the end of the day, like, remember, high school is not all about getting to college. It's just like, obviously you go to college after high school if you want to, but your health is number one, and your health affects how you perform in your high school and then with other classes. So make sure you're prioritizing that. If you're dealing with extreme stress, reassess, make sure you are taking care of yourself. I answered this in the chat really quick. Somebody asked like what grade you start pursuing summer programs. Most of them are the summer after junior year. So you apply to them in junior year. Some of them are available actually summer after sophomore year, but those are usually more competitive. And so you'll probably have a slightly like harder chance of getting into those, but you can still apply to those. And so those you would apply to during your sophomore year. Finding research opportunities as a high school student. I think that one thing that I did, and I think Evan did, and maybe Vincent, is cold emailing professors is actually very effective if you cold email enough professors, and if you cold email them in the right techniques. And I can't teach that all right now, but of course we could. I keep bringing this back up, but like if you in the workshops we could go over that. But essentially, cold emailing is just like finding a professor that has somebody that has an interest that's related to you and sending them an email. It's hard to voice those emails in the right way. You don't want to come off as too presumptuous, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, those are the main research opportunities that a high school student will find is just asking a professor if they're willing to take you up as an intern. Other than outside the summer programs, that's the only ways you're going to get that, because you don't have access to lab equipment. You don't have access to a lot of these advanced things that you need for labs. So that's the main part of research opportunities in high school. And we want to touch on how much weight does athletic achievement hold in the application of a student not taking the recruiting pathway?
Evan, do you want to do that one?
Sure. Okay, so I know I mentioned like briefly considering looking at like being recruited for squash and then ended up not doing that. And so in that case, colleges understand, okay, even if you're not going to play for their varsity baseball team or whatever it is, just because you played varsity baseball in high school, it does show that you committed like a serious amount of time. So it like I think of it just like like any other extracurricular. So like obviously, if you play on like a sports team, you're putting in like a significant amount of time and effort into that. It shows dedication, it shows hard work. If you're like a captain or something, it shows leadership as well. And so just because you're not like a like top 5 ranked tennis player in the country doesn't mean you should stop playing tennis in high school just because you think it won't help. I think it's certainly a worthwhile thing. And then it also ties to maintaining your health, as Daniel said. It's certainly a good thing, not just for college, but just for you as a person to be getting some exercise. So I would certainly say that like athletic achievement still holds pretty considerable weight, just as much as any other extracurricular. Let's see. Okay, so Sabrina asked about honors and AP courses, but I think we already touched on that. And so we'll go to Mindy's question about, are leadership positions important for an application? Maybe Vincent, you have something to add with that one.
Yeah, of course. So, definitely leadership is probably one of the most important parts of your application. Pretty much everyone I know has some form of leadership, whether that's in a club, on a sports team, or even outside of school on some other organization. Leadership basically just shows that you are able to take the lead and lead others. And I think every single college, they're looking for people who can change the world. I know that sounds like corny and everything, but it really how it is. They're looking for people who, they want the next best, they want the next best lawyers or the next best mathematicians and whatever. And if you want to be the best, you need to be able to lead others and talk to other people. So yes, of course, in short, leadership positions are definitely important. And I definitely think that, try your best to, even like, in clubs, when you run for leadership positions, like don't be afraid of, like not getting elected and stuff like that. It might as well, just like put yourself out there, put your name on the ballot. And if you lose, it's totally fine. You can always run for it next year. Next question we have, I think we already answered about the personal statement / essay question. So Josh asked if there was an equivalent to the Annenberg Symposium regarding schools in Delaware. So Evan or Daniel, do you guys have anything to say about that?
Not that I know of, and I don't know if Daniel knows, but it's essentially just like a medical research club. So if you have something like that, then I would join that. And then if not, and you're really interested in that still, you can always consider like starting your own club, like Daniel and I started Club Good Health Club. So anything to add, Daniel?
No, I think that's it. If you don't have what you want at your school, you can always, as long as your school allows it, you can always start your own club, and that really demonstrates an interest in an area if you're able to lead and manage that club well and actually accomplish things with the club. Yeah. We can move on to the next question. Somebody asked how to get a job in the summer.
Apply. That's a short answer. No, that's a little bit cheeky, but like seriously, all you have to do, most places you can just go on their website and find their application. Like if you want to work in Chipotle, for example, you just go on a Chipotle website, or it's also easy. You can just kind of walk into the store. A lot of times, if you just ask to see the manager, and they might have like a brochure or something you can find, and I don't think it's that tough as long as you're just willing to put yourself out there. Okay, but someone asked, do you know if the IB program is weighted differently among colleges? My school only has IB and not AP. So that's a good question, actually. Do either of you want to take that, or I can take that if you want? Okay, I'll take it. So colleges look at your application in the context of your school, right? So when your counselor sends your application to a college, they also send what's called a school profile. And on the school profile, it's like one sheet of paper, and it tells this college everything about your school that's important. So it'll tell them like your GPA system, because different schools have different GPA weighting scales. It'll tell them like how many APs, IBs, et cetera, that your school offers, what's like the typical SAT score, average SAT score, stuff like that. And so if your school offers only IB and not AP, it's not a problem, as long as you are doing the most that you can that's offered within your school, and taking like the most rigorous classes offered. Even if your school has no IB or AP, and you're still taking like the most rigorous honors classes, then that's the best that you can do. Colleges get that, and you're not going to be penalized for that at all. So, next question is. Okay, someone asked about the recording. Daniel said it'll be online. What are some good extracurricular activities for someone pursuing a major in gender studies? I'm not sure if any of us have the expertise to dive into that one, but do any of you have some ideas?
I think you should pursue your passions and just demonstrate your interest in whatever you apply to. Your major is a pretty big part of your common application of your college application for a lot of colleges, because they'll see if your major truly aligns with your interests. If you're doing like all of this like environmental awareness stuff in high school, and then all of a sudden you're applying as like a business major or finance major to like Wharton, like I think it's evident that like you sometimes it's evident that you don't truly have interest, although that can sometimes work. As long as you're able to demonstrate your interest in some area, you can and you can apply that to the major you're applying as. I think that's important to framing a well-rounded profile.
Makes sense. I think that's actually.
I got one question that was like a direct message. So one person asked, how many AP classes did each of you take each year of high school? So personally for me, I took 4 freshman year, 4 sophomore year, 6 junior year, and I think 5 senior year, or 4 or 5 senior year. I kind of forget. And then Evan and Dale, if you guys want to list off as well.
Yeah, I took 2 freshman year. I took 5 sophomore year. I took 7 junior year, and senior year I think I took 6.
I think I'm around that. I'm probably like 2, 5, 6, and 6, if counting correctly. Stoga has an interesting thing that like there's technical AP classes, right? But then there's also like what they call like honor star classes. So for example, if you exhaust like the AP math curriculum and you're done like AP stat by 11th grade, there's a lot of kids who take like multivariable calculus, which is technically not an AP because the College Board doesn't offer that. But at Stoga, like it's actually more advanced than any of the AP math classes, and they still weight that for your GPA on the same 5.3 AP scale, which is good to know. So check with your individual school to make sure if they have anything like that. But yeah, I think those are all the questions that I see in the chat. But if any of you guys like, honestly, you can just raise your hand and just unmute and go for it. Ask in Chinese and English or anything. Go ahead. Or put in the chat anything. Or Daniel and Vincent, do you guys have any more DM questions?
Nope. If that's all I can answer. Did you take all the AP classes at school, or did we do self-learning for some of them? So we took all our AP classes at school, but we understand that like I think one common one that people self-learn is actually AP Chinese, because they can just take the test and there's no course at Stoga for AP Chinese actually. So I think that's pretty common, but for Stoga, there's pretty much only AP classes at school. Self-learning AP is pretty rare, I think, in general, except for like languages, because that's something you can do on your own. But other things, it's very hard to self-study for it and also prepare for the test. I got a direct message question. What would be a good deadline to finish supplementals and the Common App personal statement? Really quickly, so the actual deadline for the actual applications are usually either October 15th or 16th or November 1st. So October 16th is going to be like some of your state schools like UNC, that was October 16th. But most schools are due on November 1st. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, definitely finish your Common App the week before it's due at least. But I would definitely have a draft done by the beginning of October. If you don't already have like 650 words down, or like more than 650, so you can start cutting down. But the Common App and supplementals, you should do that honestly there's no deadline. You can do it I would do it as early as you can, as long as you have time and you're able to think through it well. Because one thing that I ran to also along with Evan was that I procrastinated it a little bit. I put it off and ended up being a big jam in October of me just like cramming in my essays going to school in the morning and then doing my homework at school and then cramming in my essays at night. And so that was a kind of a drawback. I wish I started out earlier. So the hard deadline is October. The soft deadline I would think is as early as possible. I also see, would you recommend dual enrollment at a college? That's interesting. None of us have dual enrolled at a college, but I know that there's a couple people in our school that have. One of them actually is going to Princeton. He's a friend of mine, but he dual enrolled at Drexel, and so he took classes there at night. I think that's a very labor intensive task, because not only do you, unless it's an online college, you have to go in person for the classes outside of school. And so if you're willing to step up for that challenge, I think that it shows a lot of initiative. But if that's at the expense of you being able to do activities that are genuine and reflecting your interests, I think that dual enrolling is probably not the right. I considered it in my junior year, but I decided that I didn't have enough time for it and I wasn't able to put in that commitment, and I think it worked out fine. So it's person by person and based on what other commitments you have, I think.
It's certainly rare at Stoga just because the course load is already so rigorous and challenging. But yeah, I personally think that if you can satisfy yourself with the course load offered and then still have some time for activities left over, I don't really see a need to dual enroll unless you're just really not challenged enough. But I see a good question about, actually, this is a timely one. How do you think the SCOTUS decision yesterday will affect the College Act? The context for this is that the Supreme Court released a 6-3 majority decision yesterday, technically 6-2 in the Harvard case because Ketanji Brown Jackson was not allowed to vote, but a 6-3 decision in the joint Harvard UNC case regarding affirmative action that prohibits schools from essentially using affirmative action or taking race into account in their admissions policies. And as you may or may not know, for the past 20, 30 or so years, as established by by Supreme Court precedents, like University of California Regents versus Bakke is a big one. And there's one with Bollinger in Michigan. But there's been a few big cases about affirmative action. This is the first one that's essentially saying, okay, you are not allowed to directly just take race into account in these admissions. It was released yesterday. So for the people here, I mean, okay, I think the general consensus is that I think Asian Americans are probably more positively impacted by this than not, just because it seems to be in the past that Asian Americans have been like Asian American status has been viewed maybe disfavorably, or at least not as like a plus minority status by admissions officers. And so I'm honestly not sure exactly how it'll affect us. Like, you'll have to find out next year when the percentages come out with the enrollment statistics. But I'd imagine that it will change the playing field a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a hazy playing ground right now. Does someone want to answer the question about, let's see. Okay. How important are senior year activities like the Allied Health program?
I guess I could take that one. Honestly, senior year, you should definitely try to continue all the activities that you've done. Like in terms of clubs and other organizations, I personally found them pretty like enjoyable. You know, like I wasn't going to like give up. You know, tennis is in the spring, but I wasn't going to stop playing tennis just because I got into a college or I finished applying to colleges. I think that you should definitely continue all your activities. Specifically the Allied Health program, I don't think either of us three have actually done it, but we do have a lot of friends in that program. Again, kind of like dual enrollment, it's a pretty big time commitment, but it's in school. So like basically instead of taking like a few like classes, you would go down to a hospital and work in the hospital for a few hours a day. I think it's a pretty cool experience. And if you're interested in like hands-on, you know, medical experience and you're really into pre-med, and you want to go to med school, I think that that's definitely a good opportunity. You should definitely look into it and explore that. However, you know, school like courses are also like, you know, again, like Evan said, pretty rigorous, and I don't think that sticking with school is a bad choice either. The next question is, what second language did you guys take, and how many years did you guys take it?
I can touch on that. So I regrettably took French as my second language. It's the biggest regret that I have in my academic career. If you are at Valley Forge Middle School right now, do not take French in high school. Go to Spanish, please, because you're not going to speak French anywhere outside of Paris, and then everybody in Paris speaks English. But other than that, I took mine for 6 years. So I took mine 2 years in middle school and 4 years in high school. I think that's what Evan and Vincent did too for Spanish, and that's pretty standard. I think colleges want, for example, Princeton, and they said in their prerequisites, like what they're looking for in applicants, they want 4 years of a foreign language if possible, of one foreign language. And so that's it usually shows that you're able to take on that liberal arts curriculum that a lot of those top schools are looking for. So liberal arts is in the sense that like it's not like a STEM school where you only focus on engineering or only focus on one thing. Liberal arts, they really emphasize like a well-rounded curriculum. So they're looking to see whether you can handle that. So you should try to take your foreign language as long as you can. Really quickly too, I want to mention something about the stress question that was asked earlier. I also want to mention the fact that it's really important to talk with your parents and talk with your friends about things related to stress. And it's really, really important that you can find some kind of support group, people in your school, people in your community that you can talk to when times get hard, because for Vincent, Evan and I, we all we're in the same kind of friend group, where we were all pretty future oriented. We were all pretty motivated. And generally we all had each other's backs, and we collaborated on a lot of things, and we were able to talk to each other when things got stressful and help each other out. And so that was a really big part of being able to handle that stress, was having that that kind of community within the school, that you could really talk to, and when times got tough, and that could help each other out when you're feeling overwhelmed with coursework, or you don't understand something, you just can't figure it out. It's 11 p.m. You want to go to sleep, you don't understand bouts of art law and AP physics, mechanics, you don't understand why it works. You can call up your friend, and they can help explain it for you. So that's an important part of having that community to handle stress.
I actually took 5 years of language. Actually, I did not take Spanish senior year because I finished the AP Spanish curriculum in 11th grade, and a lot of kids do take Spanish 6th, but I think I wanted to take some other courses and then also maintain still one full free period for the whole year. And so I ended up not taking it, and I think it was a fine decision. But I think generally the advice is to take 4 years in high school if possible, just because colleges do like that. But a DM question that I got from Lily. Hi, Lily. She's on Spoke as well, so I know her sort of. But she was talking about how Spoke, she considers it somewhat like a hobby, right? So not she doesn't necessarily want to be a journalist. And so she's thinking, okay, maybe should I take a step back from that and focus on some other things I want to do, such as okay, if I want to be a doctor, should I just only do medical related stuff? And this is one that I can actually really personally relate to, right? Because I don't I don't think I ever seriously considered being a journalist myself, as a profession. And regardless, I think Spoke was probably potentially the single most meaningful extracurricular activity I did throughout high school. Not only from the friends I made, I have upperclassmen friends that I'm still the EICs from my freshman year. One of them is actually at Yale now. And I remember when I got in, she texted me being "Oh, Evan, I saw that you got in. I'll take you out to dinner when you get to campus in the fall," or something like that. So it's just really cool to see all these connections that you make. I know so many upperclassmen from that. But in addition, I think it's important, especially in high school, when you have the opportunity to not solely be super career focused, and to take sort of this chance, maybe the only chance in your life where you can try out other things that you don't necessarily have to do for a job. And I would certainly recommend sticking with Spoke as a activity, even if you're not necessarily going to become a professional journalist. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see, someone asked, is it necessary to cut off all excess hobbies that you wouldn't pursue professionally, such as gaming, hanging out with friends, watching shows, etc. during high school? This is a little bit related, but Daniel and Vincent, one of you want to take it?
First things first, I don't think it's necessary because I think that we all did those things at some point in high school. But and especially like hanging out with friends and like just like, but I think that's one thing that affects a lot of young people today is like screen addictions, and that is like kind of that does negatively impact your time. If you're really obsessed with like video games or like always glued to your screen, I think that that's something that kind of hurt me in the beginning of my high school career because I was spending a lot of time on video games and I shouldn't have been. And so I think that if you're able to err away from wasting your time on things like video games, I think hanging with friends is a different story because video games, you're just like kind of like throwing all your time away into like a screen. But if hanging out with friends, like you make memories with genuine people that you will keep with you for the rest of your career. And also hanging out with friends builds your character, and that's what schools are looking for. They're not looking for somebody who doesn't hang out with friends, because college is you're going to school and you're living in dorms with your friends at college. Basically, that's what the college is. And so I would not recommend cutting out hanging out with friends or like even like watching shows. I think that's a healthy way to de-stress sometimes, but everything in moderation. I think that's important. Like everything in moderation. You should not be spending all your time hanging out with friends. One rule that was in, I think, probably all of our households was you finish your homework first before you can hang out with your friends. And I think that I don't know if that's what it was for you guys in your households, but that's what it was for me. And if you don't finish your homework, then you can't hang out with your friends. But you should definitely, if you're a parent, I don't know if you're a parent or student, but if you're a parent, don't cut your kid off from their friends, because that will lead them down a worse path than if you were to keep letting them hang out with their friends. But if you are a student, keep hanging out with your friends, but don't waste all your time on other stuff. Yeah. What about you, Vincent? You got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, like you went that into pretty good detail, and I totally agree with everything Daniel said. But yeah, in summary, it all comes down to like time management, right? Like there are some days where I could, honestly play video games like for like, hours a day, and I would still, be able to get all my work done. But there are also some days where I'd be up at 2 a.m. I wouldn't touch anything all day. I'll be up at 2 a.m. studying for a chem test. So it really depends. I definitely recommend, like Daniel said, in moderation. Like it's not bad to, hop on like Fortnite, once in a while and run squads with the boys, but definitely schoolwork always comes first. So just time management, do everything in moderation, and yeah. Do you guys have any other questions?
I think just really quick, the AP Capstone curriculum, I think that's a very confusing topic. Bradley asked a question about AP Capstone. So what AP Capstone is, brief overview, is that it's like a new curriculum that college were released within the like last like maybe 4 or 5 years. And so it's a combination of 2 AP classes. So first is going to be AP Seminar, which is your first year class for AP Capstone, and your AP Research is your second year class. And so the combination of those 2 AP classes is going to like the overall AP Capstone curriculum. And if you complete that curriculum, you get a little AP Capstone diploma. It doesn't mean anything, but it's just like a little fancy like name to group those 2 classes. And the reason why I would say it's worth doing is not because necessarily that it's like an easy class or anything. It is pretty easy in my opinion. It's not like too stressful, but I think that you learn pretty valuable skills within that class. I think it's a very valuable class in the sense that like take away all college applications, take away everything else. Like it's what the Capstone curriculum teaches you to do is it teaches you first of all in seminar basically how to think, how to make arguments, how to form coherent logical like workflows. And also it teaches you how to, in AP Research, it teaches you how to conduct research. And that's a very important skill that many professors in college are going to look for. They're going to ask you like, what experience have you had with research? And if you can pull out your 28-page paper from AP Research and show them, boom, I wrote this 28-page paper on the screen addiction in teenagers like that's going to be very, very useful for when you end up looking for internships or research opportunities in college, or even in high school still. Like if you're able to show them that you did this, you can talk about your skills in interviews. I think that it's a very powerful curriculum if you could find the time to put that into your schedule. But in terms of difficulty, I would not say it's very difficult.
Okay, I see a question about taking the AP Spanish exam. I think I'm the only one here who probably took it. So, or Vincent, did you?
No, I didn't even
Okay,
take AP.
okay, yeah, okay. So, I did take the AP Spanish exam and scored a 5. At Stoga, you take AP Spanish typically sophomore year, 1 year, and then another second year, junior year, and then you take the exam. It's the same for French, but it's significantly easier to score a 5 on the AP Spanish exam than the French exam, just based off based off the historical performance. So that's another reason to take Spanish. I don't think Spanish necessarily aligns with my interests either. Like I don't know when exactly I would use Spanish. Maybe if I were like I don't know if one of my patients and I was a doctor spoke Spanish, I guess it would help a little bit. But just because it like doesn't align with your interest, I think if you're already investing the time in the AP class, right? Like you're going to school, taking the class, like doing the homework, taking the test, like you're learning the material anyways. And I think you might as well at that point take the exam because at least for Stoga, I don't think like I think our teachers generally do a pretty good job of preparing you, and you probably don't have to do too much prep outside of class. So if you're already taking the course, I don't see a reason to not take the exam. Worst case, you don't do that well, don't report it. Best case, you do well. It's good for you. You know you're good at Spanish, and then you have another good test score to report. But someone asked, this is a fun question. Someone asked, can you did you have a hard time with your parents during high school? So maybe we'll go around for that one.
I guess I'll start and then we'll go around. I mean, one term that you might have heard before is something called the tiger parents, right? And that's or the helicopter parents. That's commonly associated with the Asian American parents. And that's basically when like you have the very overbearing parents who always tell you like, hey, time to do your work. Hey, did you study for your test? Let me see your grades, right? Um, I think at the end of the day, like almost like every single parent like always wants the best for you, right? And at times they might be like, hey, like very overbearing, and they might like, unplug your Xbox in order for you to like study for your chem test. But whatever they say, I think most of the time it's pretty important to like at least listen to it. And even if it's not 100% correct, it's still important to take that into consideration, right? So personally for me, yeah, I definitely had arguments with my parents throughout high school, during the college application process, but they honestly did help me a lot, and I'm very thankful for them. And yeah, Evan or Daniel.
Yeah, I can follow up on that. I know my parents are actually watching right now, so I can't say anything blasphemous about them. But I'm actually have nothing really bad to say about how I interacted with my parents in terms of like anything high school related. I think my parents were actually kind of hands off with me. They kind of let me pursue my interests. They were always making sure that I was doing well. In the sense that they always helped me in helping me whenever I came to them with questions about like what I should do in high school, like what I should pursue. They're always very graceful with their time with me, and they were always like willing to give their time to me if it came to it. But I think as opposed to maybe the tiger parent, I think my parents were pretty more hands off and let me do what I wanted to do, and I think that worked out well for me because I think I'm pretty self-driven in the sense that I really do like learning. I'm kind of I'm kind of a nerd, but like not I hope not in a bad way. But and I think that they were able to kind of like I think okay, a lot of it started when I was younger because they taught me first of all to value my education, and that's like that's the value that drove like the rest of what I did in high school, because once they taught that to me, once they taught the principles of like of making sure that you're putting your best effort into everything that you do, like the rest of the stuff they didn't really have to monitor anymore because it kind of went naturally for them. So if you're a parent, try to lay it into them when they're young so that you don't have to deal with some kid who's addicted to Fortnite and not studying for their chem tests. But if you're a kid, you got this. I believe in you. Keep learning. Learning is really cool. And if you want to if you want to be cool, you should learn.
Okay, I'll go last. I think I share a lot in common with Daniel on that one. And in psych, we learned about parenting styles this year. And one is, I'm sorry, Vincent, but one is permissive parenting, right? And like you don't want to be a permissive parent because then your kids walk all over you and they don't really like have like a backbone, right? But then there's also parents who are like, they call it authoritarian, and these are like dictator parents, like the tiger moms that Vincent was talking about. And you don't really want to do that because then your kids come with like anger issues and then and like it doesn't really bode well for them. But like there's sort of this healthy mix in between, and it's called the authoritative parent. And the authoritative parent knows when to put their foot to the gas pedal, sort of, but also when to like sort of give their kids some freedom. And I think my parents did a pretty good job with that, particularly with like my academics and like my college stuff. Like they were actually very uninvolved, and I think like most of the time I'm not sure they knew like all the activities I was doing. Like I would be up like at night doing this application, like they would not know what application I was doing. And so like to some point you have to build a certain degree of trust to get to that point, right? Like, okay, if you play video games all day, like they'll probably think you're just playing more video games and not doing an application. But I do think a lot of the greatest success stories that I've seen personally in kids are like the ones who are intrinsically motivated. It's not their parents telling them to do this thing or that thing. It's the ones that find the opportunities for themselves, figure out what they like to do, and then pursue that really passionately, usually turn out the best. And so I think if you're a parent, try to, it's tough, I'm sure, but try to give your kid like a chance to blossom into that. And if you're a kid, be patient with your parents, like, you know, they try. But yeah, for sure, try to be intrinsically motivated if possible. So someone else asked, what would you say is the most helpful parenting advice or support that your parents provided when you were younger, like 10 years old, and now that you're more mature?
I can talk about that. So one like kind of life philosophy that my parents always had me live by was that you should always try your hardest at anything that you commit to doing. If you're going to commit to do something, you should put your best foot forward in that. And so I think that's something that I carried with me through like most of my high school career, in terms of like whether it was like some class, like whether or not doing the extra credit, like what it wasn't about whether or not the extra credit mattered, but more about like just like if you're going to be a student, try to be the best student you can. Or like stuff like if you're gonna if you're gonna like commit to like a club, like if you're gonna commit to speech and debate, like practice beforehand. Don't just like think that you can do whatever and then that you'll be fine. Like if you're gonna do something, try to commit to it and try your hardest at everything that you do. That's the main piece of advice that kind of stuck with me, I think. And that's what I would say was the most helpful parenting advice that my parents provided when I was younger. I don't know, does anybody else want to talk about what theirs was?
I think for me, I think that Daniel actually already mentioned it, but my parents, one of their biggest advices were just like, you know, value academics, right? Like I think they really drove that home in middle school. I started doing math counts, which a lot of you might be familiar with, back in like sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And that was the start of my like academic journey, really. And then in ninth, 10th, and 11th, and 12th grade in high school, you know, once you have that, you know, foundation of like wanting to achieve academic excellence, you know, you kind of get in a habit of always doing your homework, like, you know, very well, studying for your tests. And over time, it'll add up and it'll like work out. You know, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't happen in one day. It's like a long time of, it's like a lot of effort and a lot of hard work. However, if you have your values straight, and if you know that you value academics and you want to get into one of these top schools, then I think that's probably the biggest thing as a parent, that you should really drive that home with your child. I guess we can move on to the next question, which was, how was your mental health during junior year? Do you have any advice regarding balancing schoolwork and mental health? Does anyone want to take that question?
Oh, I got it. Yeah, my mental health during junior year was tricky at times. I think like the first semester was mostly good, but then second semester, like there was just a lot of stuff happening. So like applications particularly, I remember applying to like a bunch of summer programs and scholarships and etc. And looking back, I probably overloaded myself to like an unreasonable extent. But yeah, I mean, I certainly like overloaded myself to some extent, but like I think an important thing to like remember is if you're actually like again, this comes from the intrinsic motivation part, but like if you really do enjoy what you do, it's much easier to be sitting there during those late nights and doing the applications and forgiving your sleep, just because it's something that you personally want to do instead of like your parents telling you to do it, right? So if you're being forced to do all this work, it's really hard to do. But if again, if it's something that you really enjoy doing, it's much easier. I think like even then, like I it was stressful for sure, but I think my mental health took a beating at sometimes, but I think generally I enjoyed it. And it was because I enjoyed like putting in the hours, and I honestly could not imagine doing anything else over that period of time different. So I don't know if Vincent and Daniel have any ideas, but
I just want to add something. I think that sometimes stress is healthy, but like don't take that and run with it. But like as in the sense that like stress can be good because it teaches you how to cope with situations that you're unfamiliar with, and also it means that you are really trying to work hard in something. If you're not stressed, if you're not like a certain amount of stress, um I think sometimes that like might indicate that like if you're living your life completely like comfortable in high school, that's completely fine. Like that's your choice. But like if there's a certain amount of stress, that's probably healthy in the sense that you're learning how to cope with that and stuff like that. Um, I didn't really have anything else to add to that, but I did get a direct message question. How the question was about like learning public speaking and debate. So it was phrased, how do you start learning public speaking and debate? I I can touch on that. And so basically, my probably public speaking journey started when I just joined speech and debate for fun in ninth grade. I actually joined with Evan, and we did this event called Parliamentary, and it's no longer a thing anymore. They changed it. It used to be like a 3v3 event. We did it with another one of our friends, and now it's a 2v2 event. But basically, like my speech and debate experience was like I just got shoved into the ring. We registered for a tournament because we had to. We felt pressured to, and also because we had to in order to like make sure we were like actually club members. And then when we registered, we wanted to register for the most beginner level, but then our coach put us in varsity by accident, and so we got forced with a bunch of people that were like pros. And so all that to say, like public speaking, a lot of it just starts with doing it, in my opinion. But further than just doing it, I think watching good public speakers is very helpful, because if you're able to imitate the ways that their inflections go or the ways that they're able to captivate their audiences, that was a very helpful thing for me to do some in terms of like learning how to do actual speeches in front of big crowds. If you're able to master and look at the masters, I mean, and watch and see how they perform, I think that's a great way to start. But other than that, I think just doing it is the biggest way to learn.
yeah, I mean, we got smoked that first tournament because we were in varsity. But there was like I think we actually made like won the last match because it was an impromptu round. And impromptu just means they tell you the prompt. Like you like for the other matches, like most of the matches, they tell you the prompt beforehand. You have to do the prep, right? So all these other teams came in like super prep, like they knew everything. Like we didn't do any prep. We were like writing our arguments on the bus ride. But for the impromptu round, like because everyone was on the same playing field and no one had the prompt beforehand, we were actually able to come up with like a somewhat decent argument, and we somehow won that round. So I think being thrown in the deep end of the pool it like has some merit actually. And then I mean, if you're just interested in learning how to speak, like you don't necessarily have to do like speech and debate, right? For example, I think Spoke taught me a lot just because like the interview processes are a really unique thing. And I think as high schoolers, you don't have that many chances to conduct interviews aside from like college admissions and maybe jobs. But for Spoke, like you would interview 3 to 5 people like every month easily. And so these are random strangers, a lot of times adults, sometimes with opposing viewpoints and whatever. And you would just sit down and have a conversation with them. So I think learning to talk to these strangers and then figuring out the stories that they had and kind of weaving that into an article was certainly a good experience. And then that obviously helps you when you're actually doing your own interviews and sitting on the other side of the interviewing table for college experience, for college admissions. So I don't see any other questions
I
in the
got
chat.
I got
Oh,
one direct message. So this question was, sorry, I'm just gonna find it. Oh yeah, here we go. What are some top tips for students entering ninth grade? What are some goals we should have? I guess I'll just like go over this briefly. So yeah, ninth grade, your first year in high school, definitely worried about course load and stuff like that. I think that number one is your grades, right? I think that we all agree that grades are your probably most important thing in the college application process. Don't go off like trying to pursue a bunch of other stuff if your grades are not up to par. Some goals is as other than grades, your other goals probably should just be finding your passion, right? So in eighth grade, you probably don't know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life, but in ninth grade, you can start joining a bunch of clubs, branching out, finding your passion, discovering what you want to do, and hopefully by 10th grade, you have some sort of sense of I'm interested in STEM, or I'm interested in law or writing, and then in 10th grade, you can start really focusing on that one specific thing, and yeah. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Do you guys have any messages?
I think we pretty much covered it. Well, other than that, so if nobody else has more questions, I'd understand. Thank you all for sitting with us. We ran 15 minutes over our intended end time of 8 p.m. But I'm glad that everybody was able to hear from us, and that we were able to provide whatever insights we could during this time. Again, please check out our website at pioneerprep.net for more information about if you're worried about this whole thing, if anything that we said piqued your interest, if anything you're interested in, please feel free to check out our website. Again, it's pioneerprep.net, or our email, which Evan just sent to the chat. But you can send us any questions. You can schedule a free consultation. We'll be happy to see you guys and just talk with you guys and see how we can help you. And so thank you guys all for coming. And we hope that you were able to learn something tonight. And I hope you're able to humanize the process a little bit. It is a pretty daunting endeavor, I would say. And we've all been through it. So we hope that we can kind of imbue some of that knowledge onto you guys and see if we can help in any way. So thank you all for coming. Feel free. Are we all good to log off then? Evan, Vincent? Okay, nothing else to add?
I think so. Yeah, thank you guys again for coming. Please email us.
I do one quick thing. For one of the workshops, it's actually the first date's approaching pretty quickly. I think it's June 5th. So if you would like to register, it's just a little heads up. We don't want you guys to miss any any class or anything. But yeah, that's all I have.
Sounds good. Yeah.
You guys.
Thanks for the patience, guys, putting up with us for almost 2 hours.
Yeah, extra questions. You can stick around. We won't close until like 9 p.m.
We'll hang around till 9 at least. If anyone has like more private questions.